Number 10. KASPER Cole. KASPER Cole is now known as the White Tiger, but initially we knew him as an alternate version of Black Panther in the 616 reality. KASPER Cole was created by Christopher Priest and Dan Fraga, and first appeared in the 1998 series of Black Panther in issue 50. Kevin KASPER Cole was a police officer who was itching to get a promotion and decided to start wearing a Black Panther suit he'd come across while working the beat in hopes that it would give him the edge that he needed to win said promotion. Instead, it only helped to bring him into the direct line of fire by his crooked lieutenant, Sal, who aimed to have him killed. Fortunately, the suit protected KASPER and saved his life. He was fired from the force but would continue to operate as the vigilante Black Panther in NYC, working to take down his crooked lieutenant. KASPER would be given a synthetic version of the heart-shaped herb, which grants him his superpowered Black Panther-like abilities, and he also possesses, of course, all his training and skills learned from his job as an officer. Number 9. Earth 11080 Shuri. This alternate version of Shuri also becomes known as Black Panther. She first appears in Marvel Universe vs. the Punisher issue number 1, and hails from the alternate reality where a viral outbreak turns the world's inhabitants into feral, mindless cannibals. Sort of mindless. Kinda like zombies, but not zombies, because we already have an alternate Earth for that in Marvel, Earth Z, or Earth Z if you will. Although Shuri's fate remains unknown in this reality, what we do know is that while she was around, the feats that she seemingly accomplished trying to protect the uninfected and scientists searching for a cure were pretty impressive. It's unconfirmed that the Punisher kills Shuri, though it is left slightly implied in issue number 4. You get like a flashback and he's like looking at her while she's killing Bartrock, and it's like, he might be coming for her next, I don't know. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Black Panther lists, I want to make more for you, please be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Ultimate Black Panther. Ultimate Black Panther kind of got a weird story in comparison to the main continuity version, but this was a world where we were trying to push the envelope and try new things. So I guess this is what happened. And they definitely did that with T'Challa. Well, T'Challa is a king who is known for both his strength and his wisdom, often using his words and speeches to help his people, and currently the Avengers diplomatically in the main continuity. In the reality of Earth 1610, T'Challa instead lost the ability to speak when he fought a panther in order to prove himself, and ended up having his vocal cords badly damaged and pretty much ripped out. His father made a deal with Weapon X in the US to fix his son after he was severely injured in that panther fight. They fixed him up and also gave him new abilities, including an improved healing factor and adamantium claws, but he would not regain his ability to speak. He would also receive training from Captain America. However, T'Challa would also kind of become a prisoner in the US when Fury claimed that because they had fixed him, they got to keep him and basically use him as their hero. I don't think that's how that works, but I guess if Nick Fury is saying he can do it, it's gonna happen, so yeah. Do not mess with Ultimate Universe Nick Fury. Number 7. T'Chaka. T'Chaka is the father of T'Challa and was Black Panther before him. While he might not be quite as much of a genius as his son T'Challa or his daughter Shuri, T'Chaka still has a brilliant mind when it comes to tactics, diplomacy, and leadership. Like the Black Panthers who would come after and who came before him, T'Chaka had also ingested the heart-shaped herb, which granted him his superpowered abilities, including super strength and super speed. T'Chaka was also in peak physical condition and was an extremely experienced and skilled martial artist. Number 6. T'Chaka 2. Or T'Chaka II. This version of Black Panther comes to us from the Exiles Volume 2 out of 2009. He made his first appearance in issue number 1 of that series. T'Chaka II was named after his grandfather and is the all-powerful son of Storm and Black Panther from the alternate Earth of 1119. We haven't seen too much of him in the comics, but it's safe to assume he has the powers of Black Panther despite him going by the alias of just Panther. And he's likely an all-around formidable fighter and leader, being the son of two very powerful heroes. He also packs a mean Wakandan nerve pinch. Gotta love that. T'Chaka II was created by Jeff Parker and Salvador Espin. Number 5. Queen Shuri. Shuri would go on to become the Queen and the Black Panther after T'Challa slipped into a coma in the main reality of Earth 616. Shuri has always wanted to become a fierce warrior ever since she was a child, and she is prepared to take on that role. Not only did she prove proved to be a great warrior, but she was a strong leader who refused to lay down arms in the war against Atlantis, just as her brother had before her. Shuri not only has the power of the heart-shaped herb, but her soul would travel to the Djalia, and there she would receive extra training, and when she returned to her body, have extra abilities and powers as a result. So not only does Shuri have all the skills she developed herself growing up, but she also now can turn into a bird or birds, possesses a rock form, and can travel to the Djalia plane and even reanimate the dead. So pretty powerful. Number 4. Ngozi. Ngozi comes to us from the alternate reality where after getting in the midst of a superpowered fight, she ends up becoming imbued with the powers of Venom and of Black Panther. She was originally a Nigerian track star who was left unable to walk after a severe bus accident. When Venom was fleeing from Rhino and then went on to kill Black Panther, the symbiote ended up finding her and bonding to Ngozi. Brave Ngozi was able to convince the symbiote to help her in defeating Rhino, and the Dora Milaje were so impressed by this show of strength and bravery that she was appointed as the new Black Panther. Number 3. MCU T'Challa. T'Challa in the cinematic universe was an extremely skilled warrior, but also should be well known for his perseverance in the face of insurmountable odds and his sense of honor. These are the main things that I think made him so strong and made him stand out as a ruler. But also, that impact suit though. The suit of course was a gift from Shuri in the MCU, so in a way it also just goes to show how strong the whole Black Panther family unit is there. While they don't touch on it as much in the MCU, it's also believed that T'Challa still has the genius level intellect that he is well known for in the comics, and that he is a master strategist and tactician, which would make sense considering he's likely been trained since birth for his role as ruler and as Black Panther. Number 2. Ghost Panther. This alternate version of Black Panther comes to us from the Warp World reality. As with all the creations on Warp World, he is a combination of two souls, two characters, Ghost Rider and Black Panther. Warp World was created when Gamora used the power of the Infinity Stones to fold the universe in half, merging together everything within it, so we got these sweet combination characters. I love it. T'Challa here possesses the powers of both of these heroes. He was a Wakandan prince who was exiled for his arrogance, and ended up becoming a motorcycle stuntman, taking up the show name Johnny Blaze. When an accident left him close to death, he was made an offer by Zarathos, great power in exchange for becoming her servant. T'Challa refused, but would later accept Zarathos' offer under different circumstances after learning his father had been murdered. Number 1. Killmonger. While T'Challa is an amazing ruler, has a brilliant mind, and is an impressive, unstoppable fighting force, Eric Killmonger from the comics has received a lot of power-ups over the last few years that would probably put him above MCU T'Challa, I would say. Eric has ingested the heart-shaped herb and lived to tell the tale, despite not being of the Royal Panther tribe bloodline and basically being put into a coma because of that. He's also gone to outer space, ruled the intergalactic empire of Wakanda as Emperor Killmonger, been resurrected, and been given even more strength, and also is bonded with a symbiote of Clintar. He is the definition of an overpowered villain.
Number 10. 1602 Spider-Man. In part 1 of this list we mentioned Spider-Man 2099, so for part 2 we had to wind it back a little bit. Peter Parquois, fancy name, first appeared in Marvel 1602 issue 1, but it wasn't until a couple years later in New World issue 4 where he was introduced as the Spider. Peter Parquois didn't have any powers per se, but he still got the job done for Fury. Sorry, Royal Spy Master Nicholas Fury, that is. Now, I love this version of Pete quite a bit because there's these odd looking spiders that you're expecting that are going to bite him, and then he's going to turn into the webhead, but it just doesn't happen. It gets so close, and then he's like, I'm a normal guy. It's great, it teases you, it's so fun. So this Spider-Man is, yes, of course, a little bit weaker than our 616 webhead, but I'll give him bonus points because of the ruffles. And also, no goggles either. This dude's eyes must be so dry. Number 9. Spider-Man Noir. Bumping the clocks ahead to the year 1933, the Great Depression doesn't seem like an appropriate time to do backflips and webbing people up, but the 2008 4-part miniseries finds one of the coolest versions of Peter Parker for sure. Nicolas Cage voiced this version of Spidey in Sony's Spider-Verse film, and I gotta say, they kind of nailed it. His origins are more or less the same. Norman Osborn is a shady mayor this time around, and the way Spider-Man fights crime is so extra, I gotta admit. When I read Noir, I always read Spider-Man's voice in the same voice as like Jackie Earl Haley's Ghostface, Rorschach. I don't know, it's so fitting and smoky, it's definitely a vibe, that's for sure. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be extremely helpful for our channel. You're the best, thank you so much for your support. Let's get right back to this list, shall we? Number 8. ARACHKNIGHT. Coming at you live from Warp World, one of the most out there versions of Peter Parker hit the page in Infinity Wars issue 3. Moon Knight and Spider-Man are gearing up. They're making a game plan to take down Gamora, and Spider-Man says, just punch whoever I punch in a second. Awesome, great deal. Now that turns out to be a lot harder than imagined when the both of them merge together. Alongside ARACHKNIGHT, we got to meet Ghost Panther, Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and more. Now Peter's mind was also separated into 4 different personalities like Moon Knight, each desiring dominance of his body. So there's Science Pete, the Knight, of course, the friendly neighborhood Arachnid, and for when it comes to signing those checks, CEO Peter. A combination of darts and webs ought to get the job done as well. Number 7. Spider-Kid. Making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, Earth 218 Peter's childhood is actually a little darker, believe it or not. Both of his parents passed away in a car crash tragically, and Uncle Ben was much more different after that. He was a mean old man. He was abusive to Peter, so much so that Peter actually scrapped the family name. He started going by Charlie Parker. Charlie was a troubled kid naturally. It wasn't his fault at all, but he had to spend 2 years at the Administration for Child Services and then 2 more years at Horizon Juvenile Detention Center. Now his powers didn't arrive until he was 13 after that, and then he had to bust dealers just to get by. Charlie was recruited into the Superior Spider Army by Ashley Barton, who would call Charlie Grandpa, because of the resemblance of her grandfather Pete from her reality. I love Grandpa Pete's style. The exposed arms, gotta admit, pretty badass. Number 6. Spiders, man. And now on to something a little more, I don't know, disgusting, perhaps? Spider-Man of Earth 11580 is actually Spider's man. He's made of 1,000 spiders that work together, hive mind status. So gross. See, before the incident, Peter and Gwen were visiting Horizon Labs, and instead of one spider coming down, taking a bite of Peter, he actually fell into a pit of radioactive spiders where they consumed him. But he didn't go. See, his consciousness was actually spread out within all of these thousands of spiders. So much worse, way worse, I would say. Even on the cover of Spider-Geddon issue 3, it grosses me out. You see all of them and they're great, all the different alternate Spider-Mans, and then you see him and his mask is ripped, there's spiders coming out. Like, no, I don't want your help. I want anybody's help but you. Go away. He's actually quite similar to Carl King, who came around in comics much earlier with Spider-Man's Tangled Web issue 1. Only he was a bully in Peter's class who was obsessed with getting the same powers as Spider-Man, so he ate the dead spider that initially bit Peter and then ended up in a similar conundrum. I'd rather eat the spider than be consumed by thousands of them. Everybody's turning into spiders like it's a fun thing. That's a hard pass. I'd rather just not have superpowers. Number 5. ASTRO-SPIDER. Jumping on over to Earth 3145, making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, John Jameson was the son of Jonah Jameson. He was an astronaut for NASA, and during one trip, a spider got trapped in his suit, which already sounds like a nightmare scenario. But when the space shuttle was then hit by cosmic waves, John obtained these amazing new abilities that all merged together. Now, he didn't come home and stop bank robbers one quip at a time. See, his Earth was actually destroyed by a thermonuclear war, so Jameson was assigned to oversee the construction of a spacecraft on the Nautilus platform. He, along with 35 others, are the last of humanity. So it's a little bit different than our, usual Earth 616 scenario. John can also read minds and create webs of solid telekinetic energy. He met his fate a few issues later when he was feasted on by Verna. Sometimes being a spider totem sucks. Number 4. The Savage Spider-Man. Less space and more Savage Land. This Peter Parker entered comics in Vault of Spiders issue 1. When a plane went down over Antarctica, Peter was the only survivor in his family. Now, he didn't have powers just yet, but he survived using the only remaining parachute. Tragic stuff. Now, during his rough emergency landing, the wind led him to touch down in a nest of giant spiders. And then they all just bit him non-stop until he himself gained these spider abilities, and then soon he was the new protector of Savage Land. Now later on, he was recruited into the Spider Army by Ghost Spider to fight off the Inheritors back on our Earth 616. Number 3. Hostess Cake Spider-Man. I think it's time we talk about one of the craziest versions of the webhead, and perhaps one of the yummiest, I'll say. Besides Spiders, man, it's pretty yummy too. So not only is Peter dishing out quips and flips, but he's also feeding the world. This version appeared for the first time in an ad for Hostess Twinkies, so naturally its own Marvel universe had to exist to house such a reality. And also, it's fun to talk about. So when it came down to taking on these supervillains, Spider-Man wouldn't resort to violence to get the message across. Instead, he would just huck Twinkies. He would huck fruit pies, chocolate cakes, all the treats, just coming at ya. It's so yummy. And funny enough, in Spider-Verse issue 1, the cakes are referred to as golden sponge cakes, to avoid trademark issues, then they get sued. That's also the same issue where we see the end of said golden sponge cake Spidey. Short but sweet. Number 2, Superior Spider-Man. Starting in 2013, this version is the outcome of the Dying Wish storyline, where Dr. Octavius planted his mind inside Peter Parker's. That's right, the two ended up switching bodies like it's Freaky Friday, only with super abilities, but it's always fun. Otto Octavius was dying, and when Peter visited, he had no idea it's actually his own deathbed that he was looking at. Let me explain. So right when Otto Octavius switched into Peter's body, he discovered what it was really like to be a hero. He understood the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing. Having retained Peter's memories as well in this new skin suit, he decides to just go for it and fight crime, but he does it in a horrible way. He's not really sure how to balance the scales of justice just yet. He was violent when it came to handling these guys. Otto even enlarged the suit's talons to cause greater pain to his victims. Like, is he Jigsaw? Who does this? He modified the nano spider tracers as well that get ejected from said talons to paralyze the victims. Green Goblin and his army attacked, and then it was then that Otto Octavius realized he wasn't meant to be the sticky hero that he wanted to be. After coming to terms with the fact that Peter's consciousness still exists inside of him, he decided to sacrifice himself, allowing Peter to become the superior Spider-Man. Number 1, Spider-Boy. Another fun amalgam making his first debut in Marvel vs. DC issue 3, residing on Earth 9602, Spider-Man mixed with DC's Superboy. I mean, I smell power. Need I say more, really? Spider-Boy is a clone. Now, he's a clone of Peter who was created during an accidental lab explosion. Now, General Ross felt responsible, so he adopted the young clone, Pete Ross and Uncle Jen. They were a fun pair until Thaddeus was taken out by a mugger. Sad stuff. So Pete now became the hero. He put together a suit, became famous almost overnight. Now, back when he returned to Project Cadmus, Pete was given a web pistol to help him swing around. And on top of that, he can increase his own personal gravity to help get things done. He can focus gravity inwards to make himself stronger and move faster, or he could lower gravity around himself in order to jump higher and further. OP, I would say you're pretty OP at that point.
Number 10, Thor of the Thunders. Thor of the Thunders is also known as the man named Donnell, an old man who hails from the reality of Earth 311, the world often referred to as 1602, which was created by Neil Gaiman and Andy Kubert. Thor of the Thunders was the godlike form that Donnell took upon slamming his artifact, a wooden stick, to the ground. The Doom of this reality attempted to steal this magical artifact but was unable to do so, as he dismissed the stick, which Donnell then used to transform into his Thor form. Thor of this reality is believed to be the god of storms, thunder, lightning, and agriculture. His very existence is considered very controversial considering the time period and the power and beliefs belonging to the Catholic Church. Number 9, Thunderstrike. Eric Masterson might not be around in the comics anymore, but when he was around, he was pretty powerful. He became merged with Thor Odinson for a time, and at one point replaced him as Thor as well. Eric was considered worthy enough to wield Mjolnir, but is also known for his own specific weapon, which also inspires his superhero name of Thunderstrike, based on the Thunderstrike mace. Eric died before he could even fully comprehend all the power that the mace offered. One of the most powerful abilities it granted, though, in my opinion, was that of teleportation, allowing Eric to open up portals to anywhere he chose, even allowing him to travel to other dimensions, or possibly alternate realities. Trans-dimensional travel capabilities are always super OP to me, especially when they come from a time period where they weren't as clearly defined, meaning that they could basically be as limitless as the story required. Them's the best time for crazy powers. The times when we didn't have to define anything. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more like it, be sure to show us by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Asgardian. Billy Kaplan as Wiccan is definitely ramping up to be one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel multiverse, but before he was known as such, he went by a different name and style. When he was just starting out as a hero, Billy was a member of the Young Avengers, and inspired by Thor, took up the mantle of Asgardian, styling himself as such. The name didn't end up sticking, and only lasted for a few issues before he decided to change it to Wiccan in issue 6 of Young Avengers, which more suited his magic-based power set. However, it is important to note that Asgardians are known for being tied to magics as well, so while Billy was just starting out and the name didn't last long, in a way his magics do kind of tie him to the Asgardians, who are also sometimes known for being mystical. They are mystical, cosmic, and mythological, but it depends on the story as to which aspect is more highlighted. Billy, as Asgardian in this Thor Styles, is really only being ranked so low for his lesser ties to Thor, but power level wise at this point, he's pretty off the charts. Number 7, Groot Thor. Groot Thor is one of my favorite alternates. He appeared as one of the members of the Thor Corps on Battleworld. Other than the reality of Battleworld, we don't really know exactly where he comes from. He could even perhaps be a combination of 2 alternate characters for all we know. Anything is possible on the patchwork world of God Emperor Doom's Battleworld. Groot Thor, however, possesses the combined powers of both Thor and Groot, presumably from Earth 616, which would make him pretty crazy powerful, as both of those heroes are capable of great feats. So combine their abilities and you get one strong and capable character. Groot Thor ended up joining up with Jane Foster, who is also Thor, in the rebellion against God Emperor Doom, whom the Thor Corps originally worked for. Instead of only saying "I am Groot," he instead only speaks the phrase "I am Thor," which makes me laugh. It's great. I love Groot. He's one of my favorites. Number 6, RUNE Thor. RUNE Thor is one of the alternate Thors who appeared on Battleworld as a member of the Thor Corps. His fellow Thor ended up turning against him after they realized that RUNE Thor had turned pretty evil and was killing all the alternate Jane Fosters and Donald Blakes that he could find. RUNE Thor proved powerful enough to beat and eventually kill, as a result of his injuries, an alternate version of Beta Ray Bill, also part of the Thor Corps, who was known as Stormbreaker Ray. RUNE Thor, however, would also be taken down in the end by another member of the Thor Corps who was investigating the case involving the missing persons. The Janes, the Donalds, the missing persons. Number 5, Ultimate Thor. Thunderer Thorleif, as he was known during his Battleworld days, was the one responsible for defeating RUNE Thor and killing him in the end. This version of Thor initially forgot who he was, and for a while in the Ultimate line, he was just a nurse by the name of Thorleif Goleman, who believed he was human. In the end, however, Thor would begin to remember Asgard, experiencing what others believed were delusions. Even readers thought he might actually be going insane, and we weren't really sure if he was really Thor or if it was all in his head, but later on it was revealed that he was in fact the real deal, the Norse god of thunder, and the real Thor in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Thor was established as one of the most powerful characters in the entire Ultimate Universe, and even when he doesn't have his innate powers, which would later be restored to him by Odin, he has his EDI biomechanical suit to back him up, which grants him abilities and attributes similar to his godlike ones. Number 4, Goddess of Thunder. Jane Foster has been known by many different heroic mantles. 1, she is a doctor, which kind of makes her like an everyday hero. That's like an everyday hero mantle. And 2, she is currently a Valkyrie and was one of the last Valkyries besides, well, until the return of the Valkyries, which kind of semi-randomly happened during the King in Black event. But in between, Jane Foster was known as Thor, taking up the mantle after Thor Odinson was deemed unworthy during the original Sin event. In many ways, Jane was considered to rival Thor in power, and at times even bested him. She also took up the mantle despite having cancer in her human form, and despite the fact that transforming into Thor basically canceled out the effects of her chemo, meaning that her cancer was only getting worse and worse from her transformations. So even though it was killing her, she was like, I'm still gonna be Thor. And man, you gotta respect Jane for that. That's pretty crazy. Number 3, MCU Thor. The Thor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe became so powerful that he didn't even need to have a hammer to use his power. This is a Thor who realized the power was inside him all along in Ragnarok, and despite becoming bro Thor in Avengers Endgame due to, well, his depression surrounding losing Asgard and then being unable to defeat Thanos, still was immensely powerful throughout that film. In fact, the Russo brothers confirmed in a post on Reddit that Bro Thor was no weaker than he was previous to this state, and he remained super powerful, but he was just going through some stuff at that time. In Avengers Infinity War, Thor was able to restart the Forge at Nidavellir with the help of Rocket, doing the unthinkable and holding the iris that focuses the neutron star within the Forge open himself, which meant he himself was hit with the star's powerful energy. Thor held the iris open long enough to ensure the top of Stormbreaker at least was forged, which, when you think about it and you talk about it, it's kind of weird. But when it happened in the movie, you were like, oh, that's nice. Number 2, Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill deserves a lot of respect for just how powerful he is. So powerful, in fact, that even Odin was forced to recognize him after he bested Thor in combat. This happened back when Thor, being separated from his hammer, turned him back into Donald Blake. Remember those days? While he was separated from Mjolnir, Bill managed to get his hands on Blake's cane and summon Mjolnir's power for himself, being deemed worthy to wield it. This prompted Thor and Beta Ray Bill to battle over who should possess Mjolnir, and Beta Ray Bill was actually the victor of that fight. However, despite winning, and despite the fact that the fight was to the death, he decided to actually spare Thor's life. Odin decided to acknowledge his power, seeing how great of a warrior he was, and made him his own Asgardian weapon to wield moving forward, known as Stormbringer. Also, Scuttlebutt. I just like saying the name of that ship. Scuttlebutt. It's a good name. Number 1, King Thor. One of the most powerful alternate versions of Thor, hands down, has to be the alternate future version from Earth 14412, King Thor. This isn't just because of his power as ruler of Asgard and Allfather, a power which Thor would actually rename as the Thor Force once inherited, but this version of Thor has also bonded with and wielded the all-black Necro Sword, and was also known for a time by another, more powerful name and mantle, King Phoenix. This happened after Wolverine relinquished the Phoenix Force and thereby his life to supercharge Mjolnir in helping King Thor to defeat Doom, because that's basically what he needed. He needed the Phoenix Force to do that. Never fear though, after Doom was defeated, the Phoenix Force managed to later resurrect Logan, because that's how the Phoenix Force do. So even though Logan was like, I give up my life and my power for you, Thor, he still gotta come back after.